Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see so many familiar faces. I have the real privilege of having a conversation with two of our most wonderful deans, and I can say that because I've had the privilege to serve on the board with Bob for 6 years, on the advisory board council, and now with John for 2 years. So I hope we're going to have a great conversation. One thing, I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes. No, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to ask the questions. They're going to talk. But then we will open up for questions from the audience. So we'll hope that you'll be thinking about anything you want to ask either dean. So Bob, why don't we start out with you, and can you share a little bit more about what you've been doing since you left the dean's office?
Well, since I left, I continue, as Rafe said, to teach here, which is great to have the contact with students. I teach in the fall and in the winter a seminar in leadership for second years. And I'm on 5 boards, I guess, still, counting a nonprofit board. I do a little consulting, a little speaking, and after playing tennis 50 years, which I still do, I'm taking up golf. And, it's not easy.
How's your game? How's your game?
But unlike most people my age, I am getting better.
Not surprisingly. Anyway. Well, John, what about you? Can you share reflections on your first year? I mean, you had a whirlwind first year, and now you're easing into year 2.
Well, first of all, just I want to say welcome to all of you who are here. It's so fabulous to have everyone back on campus, and fabulous to have a record turnout for every single class, and just an amazing sign of how engaged alumni are here. It's just a pleasure to see it. And thank you, Sandra, for doing this. And Bob, also, thank you so much for doing this. It's a real honor to get to be up here with you. First year, I had a fabulous first year. I have been at Stanford for, well, 20-odd years if you count being a student. But coming into the GSB, one of the things I had the opportunity to do last year was just to get out and meet a ton of people, the faculty, the staff, the students, and many, many alumni all around the country, and this year around the world. And that was a really special experience, because you see in doing that what a sensational group of people we've had here for such a long period of time, and what great leadership we've had at the school that has sustained it as an incredible institution. And it's how well positioned it is to be not just today a leader in management education and in intellectual leadership, but the opportunities that we have in front of us. So it was really inspirational.
That's great. So, Bob, I understand your congratulations are in order. It's your 50th reunion. So, congratulations to that.
Class of 67.
Class of 67. Yeah. All right. So, taking a step back with that perspective, what do you think the key changes are that we've seen in business education over the last 50 years? And importantly, how do you think it will continue and change going forward?
Well, it's great to be able to comment on 50 years. When we came here in '65, the group that's here, I don't think we realized the revolution that was going on at Stanford at that time. Ernie Arbuckle was dean. He had received the advice from Liebach and Jim Howell and others that, business education needed to be a lot more rigorous as well as relevant. And Ernie, with the backing of the university, went out and recruited absolutely top scholars in economics and organizational psychology and statistics. People like Liebach and Hal Levitt and Ezra Solomon. I mean, many of the names we all remember here. And that was an incredible breakthrough. It really launched the GSB into being the leading school of business and business management in the world. We took the best of the social scientists and convinced them to come to a business school where we enjoyed incredible respect from the university that we hadn't had before. We'd been kind of dominated by accountants and practitioners, and we became a really respectable academic institution, but a great place to come and learn business. Yeah. What do I think in the future? I'm going to leave that to the dean.
Okay, fair enough. John?
So Bob, I think he's got an incredible perspective over all that time. And I have to say, when I got appointed dean, one of the first things I did was I went and read Jim Howell's book. He was the professor here who had written, there's a crisis in management education back in the 50s that Bob referred to, and he wrote a report for the Ford Foundation that laid out the path forward for management education, which Ernie Arbuckle, to his great credit, really executed on like no one else in terms of building a great academic business school. Having seen where the school is now, I think it's interesting to see how it's evolved because, and actually Bob gets a huge amount of credit because that academic foundation of being very rigorous and being part of a great research university and also relevant, that's been a foundation of the school for a long time. And Bob really took the school in many ways to a new level by bringing in so much more in terms of leadership education and helping people to be at school, not just get that foundation, but to be great interpersonally, to be great communicators, to be great leaders of teams and organizations. And I think that's been a big transition at the school that I see having, looking at it now for what's happened in the recent past at the school.
So Bob, you spent time outside the United States working in Australia, as I recall. And you were really early on in our push for globalization as a school. So what skills do you think are essential that students should acquire to be successful in today's global business market?
Well, the thing I see talking to CEOs and business people, big organizations, is you just have to be able to operate in different cultures, different countries, different cultures, multicultural teams. And one of the biggest challenges in a lot of companies is somebody is a real star in their home environment and they send them to another part of the world and they just struggle. They really fumble and have real difficulty. So I think it's just a given that you're going to be involved with teams around the world, with multicultural workforces. You're probably going to be assigned to live and work in another country or culture at some point, and the ability to listen and learn and figure out how to operate in a culture is going to be a very critical skill. I mean, that's number one. The other might be technology, but let John talk about that.
And I was going to follow up on that, John. So talk to us about what Stanford's doing to help students prepare for that.
Well, I think it has become so central to the educational experience here now, the global nature. First of all, the school is 40% international students in the MBA program, and the MSX program is about 60% international. This year's MBA class, there are a little over 400 students. They're from 62 different countries. And when you sit in this, up here on the stage, you look out, when we have a view from the top or a student welcome or whatever it is, it's like walking into the United Nations. And for the students, that just means they're being constantly exposed to people from different backgrounds, different geographies, different cultures. And it makes for an incredibly rich environment just at the school in terms of how they relate to one another. And then, of course, we've also put a lot of global, and again, this came out of Bob's time as dean, a lot of focus on global education into the program. So every student has a global experience, often a global trip. We've now started to offer not just a global study trip during the school year, but we offer students the opportunity, even before they start at the school, to go on a faculty-led global study seminar so they can have their first experience actually traveling around the world and seeing what's going on with businesses and organizations even before they get here.
Okay, so how many of us wish we could come back to today's program and do it all over again? I know I keep saying that. So, no, that's terrific. So Bob, you're still teaching, obviously, at the GSB, thankfully. Can you give us some perspective on how the changes you've seen since you finished your term as dean?
Well, I think today's students are, they're more globally aware, they're more socially conscious. They want to do well, but they also want to do good. And as John pointed out, they are incredibly multinational. When you think about 417 students from 61 different countries. The other thing that amazed me, I'm just looking at the new class coming in, they come from 300 different organizations. So 417 people coming from 300 and different organizations. That's very few that are coming from the same employer, which is probably a surprise to a lot of people. It surprised me that it was that diversified. They're an incredible group of young men and women, like they've always been, like you were. like we all were, but they bring this worldliness that is new in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, which is really impressive. And they brought a new sense of social consciousness that I think we maybe saw back in the 60s and 70s, then it disappeared for a while, and it's definitely reappeared.
Go ahead.
I'll just pick up on, I think that that raises such a good point about, there was a period at the school, and some of you were here for it, those of you who were, say, class of 72, that when R.J. Miller came in as dean, when there was a huge rise in the awareness of how much businesses and organizations had to think about political and social issues. And to some extent over time that waned, and particularly in Silicon Valley, where it has felt, at least in the years that I've been living in Silicon Valley, pretty distant from a lot of the problems of the world and distant from Washington, and understanding that everyone is operating businesses that have global markets, but not necessarily, it's on the internet, doesn't necessarily have to deal with all of the on-the-ground social and political issues. The students that we have today are so acutely aware of those issues and have such a desire to engage with those types of issues. It's just a real rise in the, as Bob said, the desire to be professionally successful, but also to do something meaningful in terms of making a difference in the world, and doing it at the same time. Not necessarily sequentially, but taking that on all at once. And that actually is an incredible opportunity for us at the school, because it means that they have such a desire to learn about kind of the broader context of what businesses and organizations are doing.
I think, Sandra, also a couple other big changes, even since 2009, and Garth and John deserve all the credit, is many more joint degrees. You'd be astonished at how many students are doing joint degrees and how many joint degrees are possible. We just had the JD MBA for many years, and now, I don't know, John, it's 20 or something. I mean, it's a lot of joint degree possibilities. Of course, from a physical point of view, the biggest change since 2009 was the opening of this campus.
I wondered if you were going to say that, Bob. I was going
to. Which is really
we wouldn't be here back then.
Been amazing, for what it's done, I think, for us as a school.
Yeah, and we have.
And it's your legacy, Bob.
I was going to say we have you to thank for that. I remember very distinctly your vision for this school.
Bob, I want to pick up on this because it's another thing that Bob initiated, although he didn't take credit for the joint degrees, which is one of the directions that the school has gone, starting when Bob came in, actually, was to be more integrated with the rest of the university. And that's something that I have been thinking a lot about, because having been at the other parts of the university and seeing how central the business school could be on many problems that people are thinking about all around Stanford, if our faculty and students are engaged with other departments, other schools. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And Bob was actually the person who really kicked that off. I think Janet Chimendi said to me, when I was going through the dean search process, he said when he arrived as provost at Stanford 2000, right when Bob came in, the business school had erected a force field around itself that was keeping people in and repelling all invaders.
Yeah, that's true.
And Bob, to his credit, he brought down that force field and kicked off a really wonderful process of engagement with the engineering school, the law school, the medical school, the earth sciences school, the humanities and sciences, all of the parts of Stanford where there's incredible knowledge and people need to know about organizations. And that's what we know about here.
Yeah, no question. We have a lot. We owe you a lot. I appreciate all that.
Well, and people often ask me, well, why did you do that? Because as I think about it, while the campus I feel great about physically, I do feel the best about the fact that we're such a more important and integrated part of the university. And, as friends of mine in the audience would know, having been a CEO and having been a group head, so I was a group head for a long time. That's like a dean, when you're a group head. And when you're a group head, you wonder, what the hell's wrong with our CEO? He just doesn't get it. But when you're the CEO, you think, what's wrong with these group heads? Why aren't they thinking about the whole place? And so coming to be dean was sort of like stepping back to be a group head again. And yet I knew what it was like to be the president of the university in a way. I knew what it was like to sit in that spot and how dysfunctional it was when each group just thought, look, just stay out of our way, leave us with autonomy. You just can't be a great university if you don't have schools that work together. And so I was, it just became a natural thing for me. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was a powerful force, both for our school and for the university. And that's what really drove me to want to see that happen.
Okay, great. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good time to open up to questions in the audience. So please raise your hand if you have a question. And we've got a couple roving mics. So we got one over here, one down here.
Thank you very much. You've, I think, touched on both of the issues I'd like to raise. I'd like to push a little deeper. Some people, including people right on this campus, very eminent scholars, would argue that we are historically at a fast-changing moment globally, and that our world is changing, and that all of the assumptions that we have taken for granted since World War II may be shifting. And I guess my question is, how does a business school keep up its antennae so that it remains aware of this possibility and is able to respond to the possibility of a real tidal wave happening that could, in some sense, sweep away a lot of the discussion that we have been accustomed to having? And may I just add a second point in relation to what Dean Joss has just said. I think it's fantastic that this business school is a part of this university in the way that it is. And that is why we are a great business school, and let's say HBS is not, because they're...
Not that we're competitive with them at all.
No, of course. Actually,
well, they've got a river.
So my specific question is, why are we having our reunion at a separate time from the rest of the university? I understand the practicalities, parking, whatever, but we should be all assembling as a part of this great university, not on a separate day, in my opinion.
John, you want to?
Well, let me take the question, the first part of that question, which about the time in the world. So, because I think actually that's such a good question. When the MBA students came this year, I get to talk to them for the first thing that happens. They all come into here, and I get 20 minutes to talk to them. And what I said to them this year was, first of all, you've come to a very special place. And the history of this school and the people who've gone through it before, that sets a real standard for what we expect of you. But you've also come at a very special time in the world when there's a lot of uncertainty about technology, about politics, about society, and there's a lot of opportunities in the world right now, but there's also lots of division and contention, and it's a time when the world needs really great citizens and leaders, and that's what we admit students, because we think that's what they have the potential to become. And I think one of the ways that the school can have and make a difference at such a time in the world is, of course, through our students and our alumni. And then there are other ways as well. And I think one of the things, of course, that the school has, I think, started to do more of and will continue to do more of. I mean, we've touched on some of the things like the integration with the university and continuing to be a great school for management education, is finding more ways to just directly engage with the world, to do more programs that are directly out there with our faculty, working with organizations and leaders around the world through programs like the Stanford Seed program in Africa and India, through some of the programs we run here on campus, opening up access to some extent to the school through online education, which we've started to do more of, not in a way that diminishes the incredible selectivity and immersion of the experience here, but in a way that does remove us a little bit from our posture as being so extraordinarily elite. And I think there's a lot we can do. It's something we have to be very, very mindful of.
Great, thank you. Another question here up front.
Yeah.
Do we have a mic?
Yeah, I'll just speak loud. So this generation is coming fully aware of the lack of solutions for things like climate change and for UN sustainability goals, things of this nature. My question is, when do you expect to gear up for helping them bridge the public-private divide?
Well, that's, it's interesting you say that's sort of a one. I would take that as one particular issue, of which there are many, where you would think about where can the school have impact on a problem of broad social consequence, and a problem that is important for organizations, but that's also sort of broadly important for society. Climate change would be one. Changes in technology around artificial intelligence and automation and the effects they're going to have on people's lives would be another. We could come up with globalization. We could come up with a list of them. I think the school's incredibly well positioned to be doing great things, and we are in many ways. We have fabulous faculty who are expert on many of those areas, and we work with a lot of the other schools, and that's actually one of the ways I think we can. In some of those areas, we're strongest together with the university, because on something like climate change, Stanford is a tremendous leader in sustainability and environmental science and environmental policy. A lot of the expertise is, some of it's here, and a lot of it, particularly on the technical side, is outside of the school. And so that's an area where we're strongest working with the schools, and that's what we do with our joint degree in environmental science and the MBA program.
Thank you. There's a question in the back. Oh, all right, no, we'll go up.
Go with the microphone here. I was struck listening to the deans talk about the emphasis on globalization and multinational and the internationalization of the program happening at the same time that our own country is America, for those of us who are American, are looking inward and becoming much less focused on the external world. And really two questions. One is just, is Stanford moving even farther away? I mean, there's a gulf between, Stanford and elite education with kind of the country as a whole. Is that an issue? Is that something that we're concerned about? And then it just sparked the question, do you see yourselves as an American business school or a multinational business school? I mean, how do you see Stanford's place in the world at this point?
Good question.
Let me take it.
Yeah, we'll both.
We can both try it.
Yeah, look,
Give John
I think clearly the demographics of America are changing dramatically. So even if you thought, I'm going to make my whole career in America with an American company, the odds that you're going to have to learn and work with and work as a team with people from different cultures are virtually 100%. And even as an American company, you may have a supplier and relationships with other parts of the world that are really critical to make your American company successful. So, I don't think that's at all inconsistent with saying, we're based here and we're an American-based school. Are we an American school or a global school? Well, we're both, I suppose.
I think that's exactly right. We're both. We have to be both. You can't be a leading business school now and not think about the global context of business. It's just, we couldn't do even if our students were all from the US, we couldn't do justice to their education if we didn't give them that whole global context and give them the ability to work in a global organization, global markets, and so forth. So that, I think, is that's for sure. I think you raise another point, though, which is our institutions like Stanford, like the GSB, and our peer institutions, are we out of touch with some of the country? And that, I think, is a central concern. I mean, some of you may have seen the Pew survey last summer, which there was a Pew survey that asked the question, are universities, essentially, are they doing social, are they good or bad for the country? And more than 50% of Republicans who answered that said no, they're not a force. They're a negative force. That is a long-term risk for institutions like Stanford, and we have to take it head on. Yeah. We absolutely have to just tackle that head on, and we have to both be a force for good, and we have to more effectively articulate and communicate what are, the way that we contribute to society, which is a lot of it is through you. It's through all of the people who've come through this school and what they go out and do in the world. But we need to be more effective at bridging that divide between, where we sit here, and we are in many ways an elite institution. We take 5.9% of our applicants, and where the country is today. So I think that's just absolutely critical to what we need to accomplish over, not just over the next 5 years, but over the next 20, 30 years here.
Question in the back. Thank you.
Yes, hi, thank you. I think that the question is related to the future of work, and there's been a lot of discussion around whether innovation and technology take away the jobs from people. I think that has not happened in the history, but there's a lot of people claiming that it could pass now. I personally don't believe it, but what I do believe is that there's a lot of adaptation that educational systems have to go about to be able to address those changes. So I would like to know what the GSB is thinking around this, and what are some of the things that you guys are doing to make sure that the people are adapted to this new world.
Yeah, so love that question. That's something I've been thinking so much about, both as an economist, because this is probably the #1 topic of interest among economists these days. Is what is technology going to do? What are the effects of technology going to be? We have so many transformational new technologies in digital technologies, and I think we don't even fully appreciate now. I'm pretty sure I don't fully appreciate now the effects these are having on all different industries, on work, on income distribution, and just on things like the way we relate to one another as people. And Stanford this year, we're going through a long-range planning process at the university, which involves all the schools, and this is one of the topics that we've started talking. Actually, we're going to sponsor here at the school a colloquium for faculty all around the university so that we can bring people together and start talking about exactly these issues and hear from the technical side where the frontier is, hear from the social scientists, hear from the business folks, hear from the anthropologists, hear from all different perspectives, and see what the university, start to think about what we might do. And again, this is an area where I think we can do a lot of great things here, but this is an area where we have incredible resources because of our position at Stanford.
Question in the back.
This is for the dean. One of the top 3.
Which one?
The current one. What are the top 3 things that keep you awake at night?
I'd actually like to hear what kept Bob awake at night, but I'll just say, we have 1,000 students here. It's hard to sleep when you're responsible for all those students. And I actually mean that kind of seriously. That's, one of the things that keeps me awake at night is just the well-being of the people here on campus. That's probably the single biggest thing. I would say another, let's pick one more is, the school's in such a strong place, and it has, and I think to me, there are risks to the school, but the biggest risk is just that we'll be complacent and we won't realize the opportunities that we have. And so that's probably the other thing, is just being really open to what the possibilities are, and then really diligent, because you have to execute to actually take advantage of opportunities when they arrive.
So I really love what he said about being responsible for their well-being. There's a famous scholar, Ron Heifetz, in leadership literature, and he said, your job is not to maximize their comfort. Your job is to maximize their well-being. You got to knock them out of their comfort zone. And I think getting that balance right between them having a great time here, but really pushing them, because they're capable of being pushed so much further than they realize. And I think that keeps any dean awake, any leader.
So Bob, when you were dean, what were the most daunting challenges and decisions that you had to face?
Well, I think some of the big decisions were, pushing for the campus, which was not supported initially by the university, that we were way down the totem pole in terms of priorities. And so having to push for that and having to sell that within the university. And I think pushing for the collaboration with the rest of the university. There was a lot of suspicion both in the school and also in the rest of the university of, you know, because of our long history of being very autonomous and very much having this fortress, as John described. So I think those are probably two of the most daunting things in terms of the challenge. I think for me as a dean coming in from business, the big personal challenge was how to get to know the faculty culture, to develop a relationship with faculty, because I was not from the faculty like John is. So that, you know, it depends from where you come as to what you really need to emphasize a little bit in terms of working on.
But you did have a PhD, which gave you pretty high marks with the faculty.
Yeah, but no tenure.
It's interesting to hear you say that, actually, because it makes me think, of course, you had the advantage of having come in, having run an organization with 25,000 people. So then you were coming to much smaller. So, you know, for me, I had sort of the reverse personal challenge, which is how do you come in and run a larger organization when you've only run a smaller one before? And of course, it's very different in many ways.
So our motto is change lives, change organizations, change the world, and obviously a lot's changing at the GSB. What doesn't change about the GSB over time, and how do we preserve that?
You know, when I came here to be dean, Gerhard Casper, who's president of the university, said, "Bob, there's something about the GSB culture you've got to work on." I said, "What's that, Gerhard?" Well, he said, "I go all over the world. I meet Stanford alumni. They say, 'President Casper, I love Stanford. I learned so much.' He said, but I meet business school alums. They say, 'President Casper, I love Stanford. I had such a great time.'" I said, "Gerhard."
We can all relate to that.
I said, "Gerhard, you know, my goal would be that they'll tell you, I love Stanford. I learned so much, and I had such a great time." And actually, I think that's the way it's been for a long time. People learn more than they realize they learned, and the more they think they learned at the time. I think they learn a lot, and they have a great time, and that hasn't changed.
So I have another story, which I told the other night, and a few of you were there, but I'm going to tell it again because it was such a lovely story, and it was about a member of one of the reunion classes, the class of '82. I was in Beijing last week, and we were in Beijing, and I was doing a press event with two of our alums who are in Beijing. One's an entrepreneur, and one is at a technology company. And there were all these Chinese press there. And the alums were telling the press about what the school had meant to them, and how great it had been, their experience, what they'd learned, how the alumni network had been so important to them, and had given, you know, just always there were alums. Whenever you needed help, you could always find an alum to help you out. They were everywhere. So we're doing this, and this fellow walks into the room, and Mexican fellow, and he says, "Are you from the Stanford GSB?" And we said, yeah, we're from the Stanford GSB. And he says, "I saw the sign outside." He said, "I'm MBA class of '82. And he says, "I'm just here on vacation it's my wife's birthday, and we're visiting from Mexico, but we're in Beijing." And we said, "Wow, that's great." And we start talking, and it turns out that, you know, he's got some amazing connections with the school. His father-in-law was the architect who designed the Schwab dormitory, Ricardo Legarreta.
Yeah, Legarreta.
And his brother-in-law is the architect who designed the new residence, Highland Hall, which you can all go see, Victor Legarreta. So incredible connection. And then we ask him, "Well, what was your time like at the school?" And that's what the press asked him that. And he says, "Well, now, of course, the other two alums, we've prepped them on, you know, what they're going to say. But this guy's a total wild card. We have no idea what he's going to say to all the assembled press." So I'm sort of wondering with some trepidation, what's he going to say? So first he tells this alumni story. He says, "Well, let me tell you about the kind of people that you meet at the GSB, like how great the alumni are." He says, "At the summer after my first year, I went to get a hamburger with a guy at the Oasis in Menlo Park, one of my classmates. And he says to me, 'I'm not coming back to the school next year because my roommate from college has offered me a job at a technology firm in Seattle.'" And he says, "You get to meet, you have classmates like Steve Ballmer." And then he says, they asked him, well, what, could you just summarize what the GSB meant to you? Like, what happened to you at the school? And he said something that was so wonderful, I loved it. And he said, I was only at the GSB for 2 years. It's a short amount of time, but the school changed my life. And it gave me the skills to change every organization that I've been in since that time. And I think that's been a very persistent thing at the school. So it was a great.
I think we would all agree with that. So last question, John. We're about to present an award after John Gardner. Can you tell us what his legacy is at the GSB and why we have this award?
I'm going to turn that over to Bob because, well, I'll talk about John Gardner in a minute. I'm happy to, but Bob knew John Gardner, so I want to give you a chance, Bob, to say something
Well,
about
I did. I knew John really well, and he was a great counselor to me and was very pleased when I became dean. He was so complimentary, and he encouraged me to teach leadership because he had taught leadership. I think he was one of the first to try and teach here at the school, and it was at a time when it was not popular. Really, the faculty didn't know it was teachable, the students weren't quite sure. And yet John had done so much incredible thinking and writing about leadership, what leaders are all about, what you're responsible for. He still today, and I follow the literature a lot, probably some of the best material is John's writing, and he'd be very, very pleased, I know, to see all that we're doing now in leadership that would be way beyond what he might have imagined was possible. So I'm just really thrilled that he has still this connection and legacy with the school. He was a great, great friend of Ernie's, so those of you from the older classes who knew Ernie well know that he and John were just such great friends.
John Gardner, maybe not all of you knew him. I actually never met him. He was the Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. He ran the Carnegie Foundation. He started Common Cause. He was an incredible citizen and leader. Founded many organizations. He started the White House Fellows Program. And he came back to Stanford. He'd been an undergraduate, and then he came back to Stanford after being away for some time. And he gave actually, when I was a freshman at Stanford, I didn't go to graduation, but he gave the commencement. It was Stanford's 100th commencement. And last night I looked that speech up because I was thinking about this ceremony, and it's an amazing speech. It's worth going and looking up. The most famous thing that John Gardner wrote was about, and it's very apropos of this event, he wrote about renewal, and that's his most famous book. He wrote a lot of books as well about leadership and other things, and that's what we talked about in this commencement speech was about organizational renewal. How do you why do some organizations decline and why do some continue to grow? And about personal renewal. And about, the way he put it is, why do some people go to seed while other people remain vital? And I thought that's such a great theme actually for an event like this, because of course here we are we're a long-lived institution. We have to make sure that we're an organization that goes like this, keeps going up. And reunions are all about renewal. They're about renewing your relationships with your friends, about refreshing your connection with the school, and about thinking what's next. And I think that's so it's wonderful that we recognize him at this event with the Gardner Award.
Well, on that note, on behalf of all the alumni here, I want to thank the deans for this conversation, but even more importantly, for all the service that you have done for the GSB, and we appreciate it. And